44 BC, 60 powerful men walked into a room with knives hidden under their robes. By the end of the day, the most powerful man in the world lay dead on the floor. They thought they had saved Rome. They thought the people would cheer. They thought history would thank them. They were wrong, because over the next 12 years, every single one of those 60 men would be hunted. Some were dragged through mud and executed like animals. Some were tortured until their own families could not recognize their bodies. One killed himself because he believed he had lost a battle he had actually won. Another was abandoned by his own soldiers and left to beg for mercy. None of them died peacefully. Not one. And the strangest part? The man who destroyed them all was only 18 years old. He had no army, no experience, no power, just a name. This is what happened after they killed Julius Caesar. Stay with us till the end for valuable insights. Like, subscribe, and share to support the channel. On March 15th, 44 BC, the Roman Senate gathered at the Theatre of Pompey. It was supposed to be a normal political meeting. It was not. 60 senators were waiting. They had spent months planning this moment. They believed Rome was in danger. Julius Caesar had defeated all his enemies. He had taken control of the government. He had been named dictator for life. To many senators, this felt like the death of the Republic. They told themselves they were not murderers. They were saviors. When Caesar entered the room, he did not look afraid. He trusted many of the men standing there. Some were his former allies. Some had been forgiven by him after civil war. One of them was even treated like a son. The signal came quickly. A senator stepped forward with a fake petition. He grabbed Caesar's robe. Another man pulled out a dagger. The first strike was clumsy. It barely cut him. Caesar turned in shock. Then the rest moved. Knives flashed in every direction. Men shouted. Some senators stabbed so wildly they cut each other. It was not clean. It was not heroic. It was chaos. 23 stab wounds. When Caesar saw one of his closest allies among the attackers, he stopped fighting. He covered his face with his robe. He fell to the ground at the base of a statue. And just like that, the most powerful man in Rome was dead. The senators stood over his body, breathing hard. Blood covered their hands. Some of them smiled. They believed they had just saved their country. They raised their daggers high and walked out into the streets. They expected applause. They expected celebration. They expected the people to shout their names as heroes. Instead, the streets were silent. The people had run away after hearing the screams. Shops were closing. Doors were locking. No cheers. No applause. Only fear. The conspirators tried to speak in the forum. They tried to explain that Caesar had been a tyrant. They called themselves liberators. But their words felt empty. They had killed a man in broad daylight. And they had no plan for what came next. They had not prepared a speech. They had not secured the army. They had not controlled the treasury. They had not chosen a new leader. They had planned the murder perfectly. They had planned the future not at all. Within hours, Caesar's loyal ally, Mark Antony, began moving quickly. While the conspirators argued about principles, Antony secured Caesar's money, documents, and political support. The killers had believed that once Caesar was gone, the Republic would simply return. They believed the system would fix itself. They believed the people would understand. They were wrong, because Rome did not want another civil war. Rome wanted stability, and killing the most powerful man in the world without a replacement did not look like freedom. It looked like chaos, and chaos always creates something worse. That night, the conspirators went home thinking they had changed history. They had, just not in the way they expected. The death of Julius Caesar did not save the Republic. It started a storm. And storms do not choose their victims carefully. The conspirators believed the danger had passed. Caesar was dead. The knives were cleaned. The Senate still stood. They told themselves the Republic had been saved. But they forgot something simple. You can kill a man. You cannot kill his memory. And you cannot control how people feel about him. A few days after the assassination, Caesar's funeral was held in the Roman Forum. The conspirators agreed to allow it. That was their next mistake. They believed a calm ceremony would close the chapter. They believed the crowd would listen to reason. They did not understand what they had created. Thousands gathered in the Forum. Soldiers who had fought under Caesar. Poor citizens who had benefited from his reforms. Merchants. Freed slaves. Laborers. They stood shoulder to shoulder. The air felt heavy. At the center stood Mark Antony. He had survived the assassination only because one of the conspirators had kept him outside the room. They had debated killing him too, but they decided it would look too cruel. They wanted to appear honorable, merciful. That mercy would cost them everything. Antony stepped forward. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He did something far more dangerous. He read Caesar's will. The crowd listened in silence. Then came the first shock. Every Roman citizen would receive money from Caesar's personal wealth. Enough to feed a family for months. Gasps spread through the Forum. Then came the second shock. Caesar's private gardens along the river would become public land. For the people. Forever. The mood shifted. The crowd was no longer calm. They were confused. Was this the act of a tyrant? Antony paused. Then he lifted Caesar's robe. It was torn. It was stained dark with dried blood. He pointed to the holes. One by one. He named the men who had made them. This wound, he said, was made by a trusted friend. This cut came from a man Caesar forgave. Each name hit the crowd like a hammer. Murmurs turned into anger. Anger turned into shouting. Then Antony asked a simple question. Does this look like the body of a tyrant? Silence. Then something broke. The crowd surged forward. They tore benches from the ground. They ripped apart wooden stalls. They stacked them high in the middle of the Forum. They placed Caesar's body on top. And they set it on fire. The flames rose high into the sky. People grabbed burning pieces of wood from the funeral fire. They ran through the streets with torches. They were not looking for debate. They were looking for revenge. Homes belonging to the conspirators were attacked. Doors were smashed. Walls were set on fire. One innocent poet who shared the same name as a conspirator was beaten to death by mistake. The mob did not care about details. They cared about blood. The men who had called themselves liberators were now hiding behind locked doors. Some gathered gladiators as bodyguards. Others fled the city within days. They could not walk safely in the streets anymore. The same people they claimed to protect now wanted them dead. In less than a week, everything had flipped. The killers were no longer heroes. They were targets. And Rome was no longer calm. It was angry. Very angry. For a short time, a fragile peace was arranged. The assassins would not be punished immediately. Caesar's laws would remain. It satisfied no one. The streets stayed tense. Whispers spread. Soldiers shifted loyalties quietly. And somewhere far from Rome, a young man heard the news. He was 18 years old. Thin, sickly, unknown. But he carried a name that would soon change everything. The conspirators believed the worst was behind them. They did not see the storm gathering. Because storms do not roar at first. They move silently. When Julius Caesar died, many powerful men thought the future belonged to them. Experienced generals, Old senators, men who had commanded legions. None of them were afraid of an 18-year-old boy studying in a distant province. They should have been. His name was Gaius Octavius. He was in a city far from Rome when he heard the news. Caesar was dead, murdered by senators. At first, he did not even know what to feel. Shock, anger, fear. But then something else arrived. A letter. Caesar's will had been opened, and in it, Caesar had adopted Octavius as his son. Not just in private, not just in affection. Legally, officially, Octavius was now the heir of Julius Caesar. He inherited his name. He inherited his wealth. He inherited his enemies. His family begged him not to go to Rome. "You are too young," they said. "You have no army. They will kill you." They were not wrong, but Octavius understood something important. In Rome, a name was power, and now he carried the most powerful name in the world. He traveled to Italy, quietly, without an army. When he arrived, many politicians ignored him. Mark Antony dismissed him openly. "A boy who owes everything to a name," he said. But the boy did not argue. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He moved carefully, step by step. First, he claimed his inheritance. Then he made a decision that changed everything. He paid Caesar's veterans. Out of his own pocket. He sold property. He borrowed money. He gave the soldiers what Caesar had promised them: land, payment, security. And the veterans remembered. They had fought for Caesar in Gaul, in Africa, in Spain. They had marched for years under his command. Now his son stood before them, young, thin, serious, carrying his father's name. They began to gather around him. One legion, then another. Loyalty does not move instantly, but it moves steadily when fed properly. Meanwhile, the conspirators were scattered. Some had gone east to gather armies. Some tried to act like nothing had changed. They believed they could still control the future. They did not realize the future was reorganizing itself without them. Rome was no longer divided into two sides. It was dividing into three. Mark Antony controlled large forces. He had experience. He had reputation. He believed he could outplay the young heir. Then there was Lepidus, another powerful general with his own troops. And then there was Octavius, the boy with the name. At first, Octavius pretended to cooperate with the Senate. He presented himself as the defender of law. He spoke calmly. He avoided open aggression. But behind the scenes, he was building something much stronger. Personal loyalty. Not to Rome, not to the Republic, to him. Mark Antony began to notice. The veterans who once cheered for him were listening to the boy. The boy was not loud. He was not dramatic. He was patient. And patience is dangerous in young men. By late 43 BC, tension exploded. Armies marched. Alliances shifted. Battles broke out in northern Italy. At one point, Antony was nearly defeated. For a moment, it looked like Octavius might stand alone as Rome's new power. But instead of destroying Antony completely, the boy made a different choice. He made a deal. On a small island in a river near the city of Bologna, three men met. Octavius, Antony, Lepidus. They divided the Roman world between them. They called it the Second Triumvirate. It was not a debate. It was not a negotiation between equals. It was a survival pact. And survival requires sacrifice. The first thing they created was a list of enemies. If your name was on that list, you were already dead. Your property was seized. Your family lost protection. Anyone could kill you. And many did. This was not justice. This was cleaning the board. And many of the names on that list belonged to the men who had stabbed Caesar. The boy they ignored was now signing their death sentences. Slowly, calmly, legally, the hunt had begun. And this time, the killers were the prey. When the list was posted in Rome, people gathered in silence. They already knew what it meant. This was not politics anymore. This was elimination. 300 senators, 2,000 wealthy citizens, marked for death. Among them were many of the men who had stabbed Julius Caesar. They had once walked proudly through the Senate. Now their names were nailed to wooden boards in public squares. If you saw your name there, you had only two choices: run, or wait to die. Some tried to hide in the homes of friends. Some fled toward the sea. Some trusted old alliances. Most of those alliances disappeared overnight. Because fear spreads faster than loyalty. The first conspirator to fall was Trebonius. On the day Caesar died, his job had been simple. Keep Mark Antony outside the chamber. He had done it perfectly. He believed that small role protected him from revenge. It did not. Trebonius fled east and became governor in a distant province. He thought distance meant safety. He was wrong. Antony's commanders marched into his region with soldiers. Trebonius was captured alive. They did not kill him quickly. Roman sources describe days of interrogation, beatings, humiliation. When they were finished, they cut off his head. It was kicked through the streets like a toy, then sent back as proof. The message was clear. No one was too small to be punished. Next came Decimus Brutus. Not Marcus Brutus. The other one. The friend. The man who had walked beside Caesar on his final morning. The one who convinced him not to stay home. Decimus had legions under his command in northern Italy. For a moment, he believed he still had power. But power depends on loyalty, and loyalty depends on survival. When Octavius made peace with Antony, Decimus suddenly stood alone. His soldiers began to desert. One by one, they switched sides. They joined the rising power. He tried to flee across the Alps. He disguised himself. He traveled with only a few guards. But local tribes captured him. He tried to bribe his captors. It did not work. A message was sent to Antony. What should we do with him? The reply came back. Kill him. Decimus died in a small village far from Rome. No senate, no speeches, no honor, just a quiet execution. His head was sent south as confirmation. Others fell in different ways. Some were killed by their own slaves. Fear turned servants into judges. Some disappeared at sea. Some were defeated in small battles no one remembers. Each death was another stone added to a growing monument of consequences. But the two most important conspirators were still alive. Marcus Brutus and Cassius, the philosopher and the soldier. They had escaped to the eastern provinces. There, they gathered legions. 19 in total. They controlled Greece, Syria, and parts of Asia Minor. They believed they still had a chance. They told their soldiers they were fighting for the Republic. They spoke about freedom, about ending tyranny, but every speech had a shadow behind it. Because the boy they ignored was no longer just a boy. Octavius and Antony were marching east. Together, two massive armies moving toward Greece. The final confrontation was coming. This would not be another assassination in a closed room. This would be open war. Tens of thousands of soldiers. Steel against steel. Dust, fire, screaming men. And somewhere inside that coming storm, the last hope of the conspirators would collapse. They had started this with 23 stab wounds. It would end with something far larger. By the autumn of 42 BC, Two enormous armies faced each other in northern Greece near the town of Philippi. This was no small conflict. This was not a street riot. This was not an assassination. This was war on a scale Rome had rarely seen. On one side stood Marcus Brutus and Cassius. Together they commanded nearly 100,000 men. They had strong defensive positions on high ground. They had supply lines from the sea. They had time on their side. All they needed to do was wait. On the other side stood Mark Antony and Octavius. Their army was slightly larger, but weaker in position. They were far from home. Supplies were tight. Octavius was often sick and had to be carried on a litter. If this had been a contest of strategy alone, Brutus and Cassius had the advantage. But war is not only about position. It is about pressure. And Antony understood pressure very well. He refused to wait. He forced the battle. The first clash was violent and chaotic. Antony attacked Cassius' side directly. Through marshland, through mud, through defensive walls. The fighting was brutal. Soldiers pushed each other into trenches. Men screamed. Shields shattered. Blood soaked into the ground. Antony's forces broke through Cassius' lines. His camp was overrun. Fires began to rise. From Cassius' position, it looked like total defeat. But on the other side of the battlefield, something very different was happening. Brutus had launched his own attack. And he was winning. His forces smashed into Octavius's camp. They overran it. Octavius himself barely escaped capture. For a moment, the battle was balanced. Each side had broken the other's wing. It was not a defeat. It was a draw. But Cassius did not know that. From where he stood, he could only see smoke from his burning camp. He saw enemy soldiers moving through the chaos. Then he saw a cloud of dust in the distance. Cavalry riding fast. Through the dust, he could not see their banners clearly. He sent a scout to check. Minutes passed. The scout did not return quickly. Cassius made a decision. A fatal one. He believed the cavalry was enemy reinforcements. He believed Brutus had been defeated. He believed the entire battle was lost. Rather than be captured, he chose death. He turned to his freedman, a man who had once been his slave. They had made a pact long before this day. If capture seemed certain, the freedman would kill him. Cassius gave the order. The sword was raised and driven into his neck. He died believing everything had failed. Minutes later, the scout returned. The cavalry had been Brutus's men. They had won their part of the battle. Cassius had killed himself because of dust and fear. When Brutus found his body, something inside the army broke. Cassius had been the strategist, the realist, the hard edge. Brutus was a philosopher, a man of ideals. But ideals do not hold armies together when hope begins to fade. For 3 weeks after the first battle, both sides waited. But morale inside Brutus's army began to crumble. Soldiers whispered. Officers argued. Desertions increased. Antony slowly tightened pressure. He extended his lines, cut off water access, encouraged defections. He did not rush. He waited for weakness to grow. Brutus felt it slipping. He knew waiting longer would only make things worse. So he attacked again. The second battle was decisive. Antony's forces held firm. Then they counterattacked. Brutus's lines shattered. The retreat turned into panic. Men threw down weapons. Some fled into the hills. Others were cut down where they stood. By nightfall, the army of the liberators no longer existed. Brutus retreated to a small hill with a handful of loyal friends. The republic he believed he had saved was gone. The dream had ended in mud and blood. That night, he spoke quietly to his companions. He said he had spent his life practicing virtue, and now he saw that virtue alone could not control fate. One by one, he asked his friends to help him die. They refused. Finally, one agreed. Brutus held the sword. He ran forward and ended his own life. When Antony found the body, he covered it respectfully. But Octavius was colder. Brutus's head was cut off. It was meant to be displayed in Rome. It never arrived. The ship carrying it sank in a storm. And with that, the last true leaders of the conspiracy were dead. But the hunt was not over. After Philippi, the war was over. But the punishment was not. The armies of Brutus and Cassius were gone. Their leaders were dead. The dream of restoring the Republic had collapsed in the dust of Greece. But some of the smaller conspirators were still alive, scattered, hiding, trying to survive in a world that had no mercy left. They had once called themselves liberators. Now they were fugitives. Some tried to disappear in distant provinces. Some joined pirate fleets. Some switched loyalties again and again, hoping to escape notice. It did not matter. The new rulers of Rome had long memories. Octavius did not shout about revenge. He did not make dramatic speeches. He simply waited. And then he removed people quietly, one by one. The last known assassin of Caesar was a minor senator named Cassius Parmensis. He had not been the loudest voice in the conspiracy. He had not led armies. He had simply held a dagger that day. After Philippi, he fled from one protector to another. First to one fleet, then to another commander. Every time the political winds changed, he moved again. But winds always settle eventually. And when they do, there is nowhere left to run. In 30 BC, 14 years after Caesar's murder, Octavius's agents found him in Athens. There was no great battle, no public speech, just an execution. Quiet, final. Roman writers later claimed that in his last months, Cassius Parmensis suffered terrible nightmares. He dreamed of a dark, silent figure watching him, not speaking, not moving, just standing there, waiting. He was the last of the 60. After him, there were none left. Every man who had raised a dagger against Caesar was dead. Not one died peacefully. Not one retired into comfort. Not one grew old telling stories of saving Rome. Instead, their actions had created something far greater than the man they killed. Because while they were being hunted, the young heir continued to rise. Octavius eliminated rivals slowly. First Lepidus was pushed aside. Then, years later, Antony himself became the next threat. Their alliance did not last. It never does when power is divided. Antony allied himself with Cleopatra of Egypt. War followed again. And in 31 BC, at the naval battle of Actium, Octavius defeated them. Antony and Cleopatra both took their own lives soon after. Octavius stood alone. There were no more equal partners, no more rivals of the same weight. Rome was exhausted from decades of civil war. The Senate was weak. The people were tired. And the army belonged to him. He did something clever. He did not call himself king. He did not declare himself dictator for life. He returned power to the Senate. Officially, symbolically, and the Senate gave it right back. With new titles, new honors, new authority, he became Augustus, the first Roman emperor. He ruled for 41 years, longer than Caesar ever could have. Under him, the Republic did not return. It transformed into an empire, permanent, stable, centralized, exactly what the conspirators had claimed to fear. They had killed one man to prevent a dictatorship. Their actions triggered 17 years of civil war. Hundreds of thousands died across Rome's territories. The Senate became weaker than ever. And the young boy they ignored became the most powerful ruler Rome had ever seen. Julius Caesar was declared a god after his death. Temples were built in his honor. His name became sacred. And Augustus, the boy who avenged him, became the son of a god. History remembered the assassins for one thing: murder. It remembered Caesar for conquest. It remembered Augustus for building an empire. The irony is almost unbearable. They believed they were protecting freedom. Instead, they ended it. They believed they were stopping tyranny. Instead, they made it permanent. They believed killing one man would fix Rome. Instead, they broke it. And in the end, the most powerful weapon in Rome was not a dagger. It was patience. And patience belonged to the 18-year-old boy. The 60 men who walked into that Senate chamber believed they controlled the future. They did not. The future was watching them. And it was only getting started. If you enjoy dark, untold history, subscribe because we uncover what others won't.